When I was 15, my parents made it crystal clear that my only purpose in this world was to serve my brother. He was the golden boy, the miracle child. I was the invisible maid who kept his clothes clean and his belly full. School? Dreams? Not for me, I had chores to do. But the funny thing about life is, even a doormat can stand up. Years later, the nothing daughter they treated like trash made them pay in a way they never saw coming. And it all started the night I finally walked out. Have you ever felt worthless just because you weren't the child they wanted? Drop a comment below and share your story. I read every single one. And if you believe toxic parents always get what they deserve, hit like, subscribe, and stay for more family revenge stories. My name's Anna Carter. I grew up in a small town in the Midwest. One of those places where everyone knows each other's business, but no one ever steps in when something's wrong behind closed doors. My parents, John and Linda Carter, were church-going, smiling neighbors on the outside. But inside our house, they worshipped only one thing: my little brother, Tyler. He was the golden boy, the miracle baby they got after trying for years. When I came along first, I was nothing special, just the trial run. But Tyler? Tyler was the future. I still remember my mom telling me when I was 10, "Anna, your job is to take care of Tyler. He's going to be someone big one day, and you'll be proud to say you helped him get there." Back then, I believed her. I thought maybe if I was helpful enough, they'd love me too. When Tyler turned 12 and I turned 15, my parents pulled me out of high school because there wasn't enough money for both kids to go. Tyler needed new sports gear, private tutors, and a car when he turned 16. Me? I didn't need anything but a mop and a bucket, according to my mom. So while my friends were planning prom and SATs, I was scrubbing our kitchen floor at 2 a.m., or folding Tyler's laundry while he bragged to his friends about how I'd always do his chores. When the house needed repairs, I'd clean houses in town to earn cash my dad would pocket for Tyler's college fund. Every time I asked why I couldn't go back to school, my dad would just shrug. "Girls don't need fancy degrees, Anna. Tyler's gonna take care of you someday." And every time I dared to complain, my mom would slap the back of my head and hiss, "Don't talk back. Be grateful you have a roof over your head." I'd fall asleep on the old couch in our basement most nights, too exhausted to cry. But every night, I dreamed about running far away. I'd picture myself with my own place, my own money, my own life. No parents telling me I was worthless, no brother barking orders at me like I was born to serve him. But dreams don't pay bills, and dreams don't stop toxic parents from tightening their grip. Every time I tried to stash away $1 or $2 from my cleaning jobs, my mom would find it in my purse and take it back, claiming she needed it for groceries, though somehow there was always money for Tyler's new video games. One night, when I was 19 and Tyler was about to head off to a fancy out-of-state college I helped pay for, everything came to a head. I'd spent the whole day cleaning a neighbor's house for extra money. I came home tired and hungry, only to find Tyler sitting at the dinner table complaining that his favorite shirt wasn't washed yet. When I said I'd do it after I ate something, my dad slammed his hand on the table so hard the dishes rattled. He yelled that I was lazy and selfish, that I should be ashamed for putting myself before the son who's going places. Tyler just laughed and called me the family slave. Mom agreed. That was the moment something snapped in me. I looked around at my so-called family, these people who never saw me as anything but a maid. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel sad. I felt angry. That night, I waited until everyone was asleep. I grabbed my old backpack, stuffed it with a change of clothes, and the $42 I'd managed to hide behind the dryer, and I walked out the front door. No note, no goodbye. I didn't even look back. I didn't have a plan. I didn't have anyone waiting for me. But I did have something they could never take away again. My freedom. And someday, I promised myself, they'd see exactly what happens when you treat your own child like dirt. When I stepped off that bus in the city at 3 in the morning, I had nothing but a torn backpack, $42, and a hunger so deep it made my stomach ache more than any slap my mom ever gave me. I'd never been to the city alone before. I didn't know where to sleep, where to get food, or who to trust. I found a 24-hour diner, bought the cheapest cup of coffee they had, and sat there for hours, hoping the waitress wouldn't kick me out for loitering. The next few nights, I slept behind a gas station dumpster. The ground was cold, and every sound made me flinch. But every time I thought about turning back, I remembered Tyler's smug face when he called me the family slave, and my mom's voice telling me to be grateful for the scraps they threw at me. No. I'd rather freeze to death in an alley than crawl back to my toxic parents and beg. After a week, my $42 were gone. My clothes smelled like trash. I hadn't eaten a real meal in days. I sat outside a corner store one morning, head down, wondering if I'd made a huge mistake. Maybe they were right. I really was worthless without them. That's when a man in a stained apron came out of the tiny diner next door and shouted at me to move along. But when I stood up, dizzy from hunger, he paused. Maybe he saw how desperate I looked, or maybe he just needed cheap help. "You looking for work, girl?" he asked, squinting at me like I might run away. I nodded so hard my head spun. "I'll do anything, please." He laughed. "Good. We need dishwashers, pays minimum wage, under the table. You want it?" It wasn't a rescue, it wasn't kind, but it was a lifeline. I washed dishes in that greasy diner for 12 hours straight that first day. My hands bled from the hot water and cheap soap. I burned my wrist on a fryer trying to help the cook when he yelled at me to hurry up. But I didn't complain. Every dollar I earned was a tiny rebellion against my toxic parents. Every hour I spent on my feet was a step away from being their slave. At night, I slept in the back storage room with my backpack for a pillow. The owner didn't care as long as I showed up on time and didn't ask for more than he was willing to give. I saved every tip the waitresses slipped me when the boss wasn't looking. I skipped meals so I could keep a few more dollars in my pocket. A month later, I'd saved just enough to rent a cot in a rundown women's shelter. I cried the first night I slept there. Not because I was sad, but because it was the first time in years I'd closed my eyes without listening for my mom's footsteps or Tyler's voice barking orders. The city was still cold and cruel, but at least it was mine. One night after my shift, I sat in that cramped shelter room and pulled out a crumpled flyer I'd found taped to a lamppost. Learn a trade. Free information session. I didn't know a single thing about jobs or schools, but I knew how to clean. I'd spent my whole life doing it for people who didn't appreciate it. Maybe, I thought, I could do it for people who'd actually pay me. So I showed up at that information session wearing the only clean shirt I had. I listened to a woman talk about housekeeping, laundry services, and small cleaning businesses. I scribbled down every word. She asked if anyone had experience. When I said I'd been managing household cleaning for years, she laughed and said I was more qualified than half the people there. For the first time, I felt something warm flicker in my chest, something my toxic parents had spent years trying to kill. Hope. I still washed dishes during the day. At night, I worked part-time with a tiny local laundry shop. The owner was a tough old lady named Doris, who didn't care about my past. She cared that I showed up on time and did the job right. Doris taught me how to run machines, talk to customers, handle cash. She told me if I saved up, maybe I could buy my own equipment someday. I clung to that idea like it was oxygen. Meanwhile, my parents tried to track me down. I knew because they called the diner once, screaming at the manager that I'd stolen money and abandoned my family responsibilities. The manager asked me if I wanted him to call them back. I told him if he ever gave them my location, I'd quit on the spot. He didn't ask again. Word got back to me that Tyler had gotten into his dream college, but the tuition was higher than they'd planned for. They'd maxed out credit cards. Dad started drinking more. Mom called every relative begging for help, but no one would lend them money for long. Everyone knew my parents didn't pay back what they borrowed. I stayed quiet. I worked harder. I hid cash under my mattress in the shelter. I made a promise to myself. Someday, I'd own something they couldn't touch. And if the day came that my parents and Golden Boy brother ever needed me, they'd find out exactly what it felt like to be ignored, to be treated like dirt, just like they treated me. That was the moment I stopped being their obedient daughter. That was the night Anna Carter, the family's invisible maid, started becoming something more dangerous than they ever imagined. Free, angry, and ready to make them pay for every single dirty dish, every slap, every lie they ever used to keep me small. Working for Doris at the little laundry shop wasn't glamorous. The machines were old and noisy. The steam made my hair stick to my face. But every time I folded a crisp shirt or handed a cleaned blanket back to a grateful customer, I felt something my toxic parents never gave me: a sense of worth. Doris paid me in cash. She didn't ask questions about my past. She only cared that I showed up before dawn, worked harder than anyone, and treated every customer like they mattered. Under her tough bark, she noticed things too, like the way I'd hide a few dollars in my shoe before I walked home. "You saving up for something, kid?" she asked one night while we locked up. "Yeah," I said. "My own place, my own machines, maybe my own shop someday." She didn't laugh. She didn't say I was dreaming too big, like my mother used to hiss when I'd ask for things I didn't deserve. Doris just nodded like she knew. "That's good," she said. "Don't let 'em drag you back." She didn't have to say who they were. We both knew, my toxic parents. The ones who'd rather see me crawl back on my knees than stand on my own 2 feet. I spent my days bouncing between the diner and the laundry shop. Every extra dollar went into a battered envelope I hid in the bottom of my locker at the shelter. When I could afford it, I'd buy secondhand books about business, cleaning, taxes, anything that could help me turn what I knew into something real. I'd lie awake on my thin shelter mattress, staring at the cracked ceiling, replaying every cruel word my parents ever said. Ungrateful, worthless, lazy, nothing without us. Each insult was like fuel. They'd made me good at scrubbing floors. Now I'd scrub them for profit, not for free. The plan came together slow, piece by piece. First, I put up flyers offering to wash and fold laundry for college kids too busy to do it themselves. Then I took on small cleaning jobs, studio apartments, dorms, tiny offices, anything nobody else wanted to touch. I charged less than the big companies, but I worked harder and treated every customer with respect. At first, it was just me. My uniform was an old t-shirt with my name stitched on it in thread I found at the shelter. I biked across town balancing buckets and detergents on the handlebars. My first clients were students and young couples who couldn't afford big cleaning services, but they paid cash, gave tips, and told their friends. One day, I cleaned a rundown apartment for a young mom who'd just moved out of her own toxic parents' place. She looked at me, covered in sweat and dust, and said, "You remind me there's hope." That stuck with me. Hope. That was something my brother Tyler never knew how to give. All he did was take. My parents, too. They took until I had nothing left, except the anger that kept me moving. Within 6 months, I saved up enough to rent a tiny basement unit, 1 room, 1 sink, and barely enough space to breathe. But it was mine. No toxic parents banging on the door, no brother barking orders, just me and my plan. I bought a second-hand washing machine and a stack of business cards with my name, Anna's Sparkle and Shine, Laundry and Cleaning Services. It was small, it was simple, but it was mine. Sometimes, after a long day scrubbing grime off bathroom tiles or hauling garbage down narrow stairwells, I'd stand in my tiny unit and imagine the day my parents would come knocking. I pictured Tyler in his expensive suit, my mom in her fake pearls, begging for help when their perfect boy's tuition money ran out, and their lies finally caught up to them. They thought they broke me when they forced me to be their housemaid. But all they did was give me the skill to clean up my own future, and the fire to make sure they'd pay for every filthy word they ever spit in my face. The plan wasn't perfect yet, but it was real, it was mine, and it was just the beginning. I thought about my toxic parents every single time I emptied a stranger's trash or mopped up someone else's mess. I pictured my mom's voice sneering, "You'll never be anything." I pictured my dad shrugging like my life wasn't worth the cost of a school uniform. Every mop stroke, every scrub, every folded shirt was my revenge. Quiet, steady, impossible to stop. Word about my cleaning service spread faster than I expected. College kids told their parents. Young couples told their friends at work. Before long, I had more calls than I could handle alone. I'd wake up to voicemails from landlords begging me to clean out trashed apartments so they could rent them again fast. One day, Doris, my old laundry boss, called me. She'd heard what I was doing. "Kid," she said, "you got too much business for one girl. Hire someone." I laughed. Hire someone? Me? But she was right. So I asked around the shelter. I found 3 women just like me, runaways, single moms, women tired of being stepped on by toxic families. They were hungry for a chance. So I gave them one. I bought them matching shirts with my little logo, Anna's Sparkle and Shine. I taught them how to talk to customers. I told them we'd never cheat, never cut corners. We'd be the cleaners who showed up early, stayed late, and never judged what we found behind closed doors. By the end of that year, we weren't just surviving, we were booked months out. I rented a small storefront so people could drop off laundry. I found a supplier who sold me used washers and dryers. I bought a rusty old van for pickups and deliveries. Every dollar I made, I reinvested. I read books about marketing, customer service, taxes. I watched my team grow from 3 to 6 to 10. Some days I'd drive by my old neighborhood, just to remind myself how far I'd come. And then, like rotten fruit finally falling from a sick tree, my family came crawling back. It started with a blocked call. I almost didn't pick up, but something in me needed to hear it. "Anna?" My mother's voice cracked on the line, all sugary sweet, the way she used to sound when she wanted something. "Sweetheart, it's Mom." I didn't say a word, just let her talk. "Your father and I, things have been so hard. Tyler's tuition is behind. We might lose the house if we can't make payments. We just need a little help, just for a while." I bit back a laugh so sharp it almost drew blood. Help? After they used me like a free maid for years, they wanted my help? I almost asked her if Tyler's precious hands were too soft to clean bathrooms like I used to. But I didn't. Not yet. I hung up without a word. The calls kept coming, voicemails that bounced between fake sweetness and guilt-tripping. "We're still your parents, Anna. We're family. You owe us. We gave you everything." Everything? They gave me scrubbing rags and blistered hands. They gave me a place in the shadows so Tyler could shine. I knew I needed to be smart. I met with a lawyer Doris recommended. I learned about liens, foreclosures, buying debt cheap when desperate people couldn't pay it off. I started watching the property listings like a hawk. And when I found out my toxic parents were months behind on their mortgage, something cold and righteous lit up inside me. I'd clean up their mess the same way I cleaned up after college kids and hoarders, efficient, thorough, no mercy. They'd never see it coming. While they begged the bank for extensions, I doubled down. My company took bigger jobs, cleaning offices, restaurants, real estate turnovers. We wore matching uniforms, drove shiny new vans, carried tablets to check clients in and out. People called us professional. People trusted me with keys to their homes. Me, the useless daughter. When Tyler finally called, I almost laughed out loud. He sounded smaller than I'd ever heard him. "Anna, Mom said you're doing well," he stammered. "Maybe you could lend us something? Just until I graduate. I'll pay you back." I pictured him lounging on the couch as a teenager while I scrubbed the floor under his feet. I pictured him laughing with his friends about how I'd always be nothing. And now, here he was, with fancy shoes and unpaid tuition, asking the maid for a favor. I didn't scream at him. I didn't remind him of the past. I just said, "You'll get what you deserve, Tyler. All of you will." Then I hung up. And for the first time in my life, I felt rich. Do you feel that satisfying twist? Imagine the spoiled golden boy scrubbing toilets for the sister he once called worthless. If you believe toxic parents always reap what they sow, smash that like button, share this story, and tell us in the comments who deserves karma next. I knew my toxic parents would never stop until they'd squeezed every last drop they could from me. They taught me that when I was 15, standing barefoot on the kitchen floor while my brother barked at me to iron his shirt. They'd drain me if I let them. But this time, I was the one tightening the screws. After Tyler's desperate call, I sat down with my lawyer, Mr. Reynolds, a gray-haired man who didn't flinch when I told him exactly who I wanted to ruin. "They're your parents, Anna," he said carefully, looking over the pile of foreclosure notices and debt files I'd been collecting like trophies. "No," I corrected him. "They're toxic strangers who happen to share my last name, and they owe the bank more than they'll ever repay." Mr. Reynolds leaned back in his chair, tapping a pen against the folder. "They're 3 months behind. Their credit's wrecked. The house is worth more to the bank than to them now. If you want it—" "I do," I cut in. My voice didn't shake this time. "I want it cheap, and I want them out." For weeks, I played it quiet. I went to work every day with my crew, scrubbed floors, delivered fresh laundry, smiled at clients. But every night, I pored over numbers and signatures, learning exactly how to buy my parents' debt right out from under them. I wasn't just cleaning houses anymore. I was about to clean them out of the only thing they had left. Part of me wondered if they had any idea. If they felt the walls closing in while Tyler still strutted around campus pretending to be better than everyone. If my mother still bragged at church that her son was on his way to being someone important, while the mortgage company called every other hour demanding payment. Did she tell the neighbors the truth? That her lazy daughter had disappeared into the city and somehow come back richer than they'd ever imagined? Of course not. People like my parents never admit the dirt under their nails. The day the foreclosure auction was announced, I drove by my childhood street for the first time in years. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Ugly even, with peeling paint and weeds crawling up the porch. But I didn't feel sad. I felt ready. Tyler was home that day, his shiny car parked out front. I parked down the street and watched from behind the wheel. I imagined him inside, feet kicked up on the table I once scrubbed raw, telling my mom how unfair life was. My father, probably half drunk, nodding along. They had no idea their worthless daughter was the storm rolling right toward them. When I got back to my office, I called Mr. Reynolds. "Let's finalize it," I said. "When they open that door, I want them to see my name on every paper they can't pay." I could almost hear my mom's shrill voice already. "Anna, how could you do this to your own family?" But the truth was, they'd done it to themselves long ago. I was just making sure they finally saw the mess they'd made, and that this time, I was the one holding the mop. The day the house officially became mine, I didn't send a letter or make a polite phone call. I wanted to see it happen. I wanted them to look me in the eye and realize every ugly thing they'd done to me was finally coming back around. I pulled up in my company van, big, shiny, with my name Anna's Sparkle and Shine printed on the side in bold blue letters. I didn't care if the neighbors saw. Let them watch. My parents' front yard looked worse than ever. Brown patches, garbage bags stacked by the porch. I stepped over a broken toy that might have been Tyler's from when he still got whatever he wanted. I rang the doorbell. It felt surreal. The same door I used to tiptoe through, terrified of waking up Mom's temper. Now, I owned it. Mom answered first. Her hair was a mess, her face pinched tight like she'd smelled something rotten. Maybe she had, her own life rotting from the inside out. "Anna?" Her voice cracked when she saw my uniform. Her eyes darted to the van in the driveway. She stepped aside to block the doorway like she could keep me out. Behind her, Dad shuffled in his stained undershirt, eyes dull. And there was Tyler, my golden boy brother, standing in the hallway holding his phone like maybe he'd call someone to rescue him. "Anna, sweetheart," Mom started, fake sweetness dripping off every syllable. It's so good to see you. You didn't have to come all this way. I'm not here for a family visit, I cut in. I pulled the thick envelope of papers from my bag and held it up. I'm here to collect what's mine. Tyler snorted like it was still some kind of joke. What are you talking about? You can't just… You're done, I said, my voice calm, too calm for how loud my heart pounded. I bought the debt. I own this place. You're out. Or you can stay, but only if you pay rent to me, and you're already 6 months behind. Mom's smile cracked right down the middle. You wouldn't. We're your family. You're toxic parents, Mom. Remember? You taught me how to clean. I'm just cleaning up this mess now. Tyler dropped his phone. Where do you expect us to go? I'm about to graduate. You needed me when I was scrubbing your floors for free, I snapped. Now you can scrub them for me. The look on my mother's face when she realized I meant it was better than any apology I'd never get. Her perfect world, her golden boy, crumbled in front of her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. I'll give you one option, I said, folding my arms. Stay here a few more months, under one condition. Tyler works for me, full-time, entry-level, cleaning toilets, mopping floors, exactly what I did for him. Tyler's mouth fell open. You're insane. I won't… Then pack your things and get out today. Silence filled the hall. My father sat down heavily on the stairs like he'd just now figured out the game was over. Mom's eyes darted from me to the floor. No more fake sweet voice. Just defeat. Fine, she hissed. He'll do it. I almost felt sorry for Tyler when his mother threw him under the bus to save herself. Almost. So I handed him a contract. Minimum wage, 0 perks, except the chance to pay off their debts the same way I had to earn every cent they ever stole from me. As I stepped back onto the porch, the sun caught the letters on my van. Anna's sparkle and shine. Mine. All mine. In the weeks after Tyler signed that contract, I watched him trade his shiny college arrogance for rubber gloves and a mop bucket. The first time I saw him scrubbing a bathroom floor in one of my company's downtown offices, he wouldn't even look me in the eye. That was fine by me. I wasn't there for an apology. I was there to make sure he earned every dollar the hard way, just like I had. Mom called every few days at first, pretending to check on him. Really, she was trying to sweet-talk me into giving them a break. She'd start with, Anna, honey, you know your brother isn't built for this kind of work. And I'd cut her off every time. He's built to cash checks someone else earned, not anymore. Some nights, I'd see Dad standing on the curb outside the mansion I now owned, my childhood home turned company asset, dragging his feet like a ghost who didn't know where else to haunt. He looked so small in the dusk light. I felt nothing. Maybe I should have felt pity, but pity was a luxury they'd taught me never to waste on the undeserving. People in town talked, of course. Whispers slipped through church pews and diner booths about how the Carters lost it all, how the golden boy was now a janitor for his own sister. Some folks asked if I'd ever forgive them, invite them back in. I'd smile, thank them for their concern, and remind them forgiveness is earned, not begged for. But I knew one thing. Letting them live rent-free in my head was over. They could stay in that big old house as long as Tyler kept scrubbing floors. The day he quits, they pack their bags and walk. No more handouts. No more fake family ties. No more letting toxic parents decide who I was. At night, I'd sit in my new place, a bright apartment downtown with a view I could only dream about back when I was the family maid. Sometimes I'd run my hands over the marble kitchen counter just to remind myself it was real. All of it. Paid for by sweat no one stole from me. People think revenge is loud and messy, but the best revenge is silent, clean. It's sitting in a warm living room while the people who called you worthless stand in the rain waiting for scraps. I set my boundaries clear as glass. They could work, they could struggle, they could feel the bite of every insult they threw at me, but they'd never get my pity again. They'd never twist the word family into chains around my neck. Anna Carter, housemaid turned boss, doormat turned storm, didn't just break free. She bought the keys to her own freedom and locked the door behind her. And this time, no one's ever pushing me back inside. When people ask me now if I'd ever speak to my parents again, like really speak to them, invite them for holidays, call them mom and dad, like nothing happened, I tell them the truth. I don't carry that weight anymore. I used to think healing meant forgiveness. Like maybe if I just forgave my toxic parents, all those years of being invisible, of scrubbing floors while Tyler chased dreams on my back, would somehow fade away. But it doesn't work like that. Some scars don't close with a hug and a sorry. Some wounds close because you learn to stop picking at them. I don't hate them anymore. Not really. Hatred is heavy. So is revenge, if you let it stick around too long. But I turned that weight into bricks, laid them into the foundation of my business, my home, my new life. The mansion they once flaunted is now a rental property on my books, nothing more. Tyler mops its hallways. Mom hides behind drawn curtains, pretending nothing's changed. But I know it has. I changed it. I don't need their apology. I built my own. One rainy Saturday, I stood at the ribbon cutting for a tiny community center I funded myself. Next door, my newest branch for Sparkle and Shine hums with washers and dryers run by single mothers and women who remind me so much of the girl I was. Tired, overlooked, desperate for a way out. Inside the center, a sign hangs on the wall in bright letters. The Carter Scholarship for Girls Who Deserve Better. Every semester, we fund classes and small business grants for young women pushed aside by families like mine. Girls who were told they'd never amount to anything because they weren't the golden child or the right gender. People clapped when I gave my little speech. I smiled and thanked them, but the real applause happened in my mind, where the Anna who once slept behind a gas station dumpster could stand tall and say, "We did it." They were wrong about us. Some nights, when the city goes quiet and my work phone stops buzzing, I still hear my mother's voice echoing old poison. "You'll never be more than the girl who scrubs floors." But then I remember, I do scrub floors, and I hire people to scrub them too. And we get paid, respected, and free. There's no shame in clean work. The shame was in them thinking it made me small. I keep my doors open for the girls who come after me. I don't warn them about monsters in closets. Sometimes monsters sit at your dinner table and call themselves family. Sometimes healing means building a door so strong they can't break it down again. If you ask me now what family means, I'll point to the women in my office, my staff who show up for each other, who cover shifts for sick kids, who split tips when someone has rent due. That's family. Not blood that poisons you, but people who remind you you're not alone, no matter how dirty the floor once got. Anna Carter's story isn't about scrubbing toilets or buying back a crumbling mansion. It's about scrubbing herself clean of every lie toxic parents told her and proving the one truth that matters. You decide your worth, not them, never them.